There comes a moment in your life when people don't turn away because you did something wrong. They turn away because you finally did something right. You began to see with the eyes of truth, speak with the voice of sincerity, and carry the kind of wisdom that only comes from patience, struggle, and deep connection with Allah. But not everyone wants to face the truth. Some would rather destroy the mirror than confront what's in it. Your growth begins to expose their comfort zones. Your clarity starts to disturb their confusion. And suddenly, the same people who once admired you now feel threatened by your insight and say, "The truth is from your Lord, so whoever wills, let him believe, and whoever wills, let him disbelieve." Surah Al-Kahf, 18:29. The wisdom Allah gave you was never meant to make you popular. It was meant to elevate you, not in their eyes, but in His. So today, let me share with you a powerful lessons to remember when the light Allah placed in you becomes too much for the world around you to handle. 1. Your clarity makes their confusion loud. When Allah gives you clarity, it doesn't just affect your thoughts, it transforms your entire being. The way you walk changes because you carry yourself with a new sense of purpose and inner calm. The way you speak changes because your words are no longer careless. They are rooted in truth and guided by wisdom. The way you react changes because you have learned to control your emotions and respond with patience instead of anger or impulsiveness. And most importantly, the way you see the world and the people around you changes because your heart is no longer clouded by lies or illusions. It is tuned to the truth that Allah has allowed you to see. This kind of clarity feels powerful and freeing, but not everyone will celebrate it. In fact, it often threatens people who are still lost in their own confusion. When you stop engaging in drama, when you refuse to be manipulated, when you choose silence over gossip and peace over conflict, you expose the emptiness of those who thrive on chaos. Your refusal to participate in negativity becomes a silent reminder to them of the life they could have chosen but didn't. They may begin to resent you, not because you have wronged them, but because your growth highlights everything they've avoided within themselves. You become a mirror of the healing they keep postponing, the self-discipline they have rejected, and the faith they have neglected. Your calm energy makes their restlessness louder. Your focus makes their distractions feel meaningless. Your inner strength makes their excuses impossible to hide behind. But you need to understand this truth. It is not your fault. It is simply the price of clarity. You were not created to blend in with blindness, to live in the shadows of lies, or to please people who refuse to see. Allah gave you this insight so you could lead with courage, so you could stand out, so you could speak with purpose and conviction. Do not apologize for seeing what others can't. Do not water down your vision just because others are uncomfortable with your light. Their confusion is not your burden. Your only duty is to stay true to what Allah has shown you and keep walking your path with patience and humility. 2. You're walking a path they pretend to be on. There comes a point in your journey when you begin to walk the path sincerely, for real, not to impress others, not to gain attention, but to truly seek Allah and live with purpose. You start making choices that align with your values, not just your feelings. You begin to pray not because people are watching, but because your soul is calling. You lower your gaze, guard your tongue, and choose silence over sin. You stop chasing the world and start chasing the one who created it. This is when things start to shift, internally and externally. And while you might feel proud of the progress you're making, not everyone around you will be happy about it. Some people will feel uneasy, not because you're wrong, but because you've become something they only pretend to be. You've stepped into a level of sincerity they talk about, but don't actually live. They may say they love Allah, but their hearts still crave the spotlight. They may quote hadith and ayat, but their actions are driven by ego. And when they see you walking with genuine intention, when they realize that you're not playing the same game anymore, they feel exposed. Your actions speak louder than their words. Your humility makes their pride obvious. Your growth makes their stagnation uncomfortable. and your discipline reminds them of the time they've wasted. That's why, instead of supporting you, they might start criticizing you. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being too much or too strict or trying to act religious. Not because you've harmed them, but because your sincerity disrupts their comfort. You walking the path sincerely reveals that they've only been standing at the entrance, talking about the journey but never truly taking it. But don't let their noise shake your heart. You are not responsible for their discomfort. Allah chose you to wake up. Allah pulled you out of the crowd so you could walk with purpose. It's not your job to make others feel better about staying behind. It's your job to keep moving forward. And as you do, you'll lose people. Some will drift away, some will push you away, some will try to bring you back into the crowd. But remember, when you step onto the path of truth, the crowd becomes smaller, but your connection with Allah becomes deeper. You may feel alone, but you are not. You are being guided, protected, elevated. And while they're busy trying to look the part, you're living it. You're putting in the work. You're doing the heart checks. You're catching yourself when your intentions slip. And Allah sees all of that. He sees what you left behind. He sees the nights you cried, the prayers you whispered, and the strength it takes to walk away from everything that once defined you. Keep going. Their opinion does not define your sincerity. Your footsteps in the dark, when no one sees but Allah, those are the ones that matter. So never stop walking the path just because others are watching. They watched you before and judged you. They'll watch you now and question you. And they'll keep watching, not because they care, but because deep down they know you're becoming what they were too afraid to be. 3. Wisdom is a gift and a test. When Allah blesses you with wisdom, it feels like a light turning on inside your soul. Suddenly, things that once confused you start to make sense. You begin to understand why certain people left, why some doors closed, and why your past had to unfold the way it did. You no longer react out of impulse. You pause, you reflect, and you respond with calm. You begin to notice patterns, see through intentions, and connect dots that others don't even know exist. And while it may feel like a relief to finally see, wisdom is not just a gift to enjoy, it's a test to carry. Because the moment you begin to see clearly, you are no longer innocent to the truth. You can't pretend you don't know. You can't go back to the ignorance that once gave you comfort. Wisdom makes you responsible. It means you must now choose silence where you once spoke recklessly. It means you must forgive even when your heart wants to hold on to pain. It means you must take the high road, even when you're being pulled toward revenge. You begin to feel the weight of every decision, every word, every glance, every reaction. You think twice before responding. You feel deeply, but you express carefully. And while that depth makes you powerful, it also makes life heavier. People often admire the wise, but they forget that wisdom doesn't come without a price. It's not something you're born with. It's earned through heartbreak, through solitude, through disappointment, through late nights spent in dua, asking Allah to help you understand what your heart can barely carry. And when Allah finally grants that understanding, it doesn't always bring peace at first. It brings responsibility. You start to realize that not everything deserves a reaction, that not every truth needs to be spoken, that silence sometimes is a higher form of strength. You begin to protect your peace, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand how costly it is to lose it. And you'll also notice something else. Wisdom isolates, because when you grow in clarity, you lose the desire to argue. You lose the need to prove yourself. You lose interest in things that once entertained you. The circles you used to fit into start to feel too small. The conversations that used to feel exciting now feel empty. And the people who once called you too emotional or too soft start calling you too quiet or too distant. But you're not becoming distant. You're becoming deliberate. You're no longer wasting words on those who aren't listening. You're no longer wasting time on those who don't want to grow. This is where the real test of wisdom begins. Will you remain humble in your insight? Will you protect your heart from arrogance? Will you continue to seek Allah even after He has granted you understanding? Because wisdom without humility becomes ego, and clarity without compassion becomes cruelty. That's why when Allah gives you wisdom, He also watches what you do with it. Do you guide or do you judge? Do you uplift or do you expose? Do you remember your own journey, your own moments of ignorance, your own need for mercy? True wisdom always leads back to Allah. It softens the heart, even as it sharpens the mind. It teaches you when to speak and when to stay silent. It reminds you that seeing clearly doesn't make you better than others. It simply means you have more to answer for. It humbles you in front of people and elevates you in the sight of your Lord, and that is the greatest form of success. So if you've been blessed with wisdom, carry it carefully. Don't rush to speak just because you can. Don't force others to see what you've been shown. Plant seeds gently, walk with kindness, and trust that Allah gave you this gift not to feel superior, but to serve, to guide, and to walk the path of truth with quiet strength. 4. They can't control what they don't understand. When you are easy to read, easy to please, easy to manipulate, you fit in. You did what others expected. You laughed at jokes that didn't feel right. You said yes, even when your soul screamed no. You followed the crowd, even when it led you away from Allah. And people liked that version of you, because that version was easy to control. That version was predictable. That version didn't question. That version didn't shine too brightly. But the moment you started to wake up, everything changed. You began to ask questions that made people uncomfortable. You began to say no without guilt. You started guarding your energy, your heart, and your silence. You stopped reacting to everything. You no longer gave people easy access to your thoughts and emotions. You started praying more. You began to walk with purpose. You found comfort in solitude and strength in stillness. And suddenly, people who once felt powerful around you started to feel nervous. Why? Because they no longer knew how to control you. You see, control thrives on predictability. It thrives on weakness, guilt, fear, and emotional dependence. But the moment you became rooted in Allah, you stopped seeking approval from His creation. And when people realize they can no longer manipulate your feelings, they begin to feel powerless. Not because you changed into someone cruel, but because you've evolved into someone who can't be played. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're discerning. You're not arrogant, you're anchored. And this kind of inner strength is terrifying to those who depend on others staying small. The truth is, when you no longer react out of emotion, people can't toy with you. When you respond with silence instead of defensiveness, they lose their grip. When you remain calm in chaos, you become unpredictable. And when you're unpredictable, you're uncontrollable, because what you're operating on now isn't emotion, it's purpose. What fuels you now isn't attention, it's submission to Allah. What you care about now isn't what people say, it's what your Lord sees. This is why spiritual growth often leads to tension, not because you've become toxic, but because you're no longer living in a way that keeps others comfortable. You're not participating in the gossip, you're not reacting to the drama, you're not chasing the trends, you're not laughing just to be liked. And for people who thrive on control, this is terrifying, because they only know how to handle you when you're weak, confused, or desperate for approval. But when Allah becomes your center, their control breaks. Their games no longer work, and their manipulations fall flat. And let's be clear, this doesn't just happen with enemies. Sometimes the ones who feel most threatened are the ones who were closest to you. Friends, family, even people who once supported you. They might not understand this new version of you. They might accuse you of changing, of pulling away, of thinking you're better. But what they're really feeling is fear. Fear that they can no longer predict or direct your path. Fear that you're growing in a direction they're not willing to go. But you must not shrink to make them feel safe. You must not step back just to be accepted. You must not sacrifice your growth for their comfort. Because the truth is, your strength is a sign of Allah's mercy. He's building you into someone firm, stable, and rooted. And with that strength comes the test. Will you stand in it, or will you return to your old self just to be liked again? The most dangerous thing to people who rely on control is someone who has made Allah their anchor, because that kind of person doesn't move with the wind. They don't break under pressure. They don't need praise to keep going. They're grounded, focused, clear, and above all, they are free. So stay firm. Don't explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Don't soften your strength to ease their insecurity. Walk with your head high, your heart clean, and your intentions pure, because they can't control what they don't understand. And they'll never understand a heart that is completely surrendered to Allah. 5. Truth sounds like arrogance to the insecure. There's something very strange that begins to happen the moment you start speaking the truth from a place of inner clarity. When your words come from wisdom, not pride, from experience, not ego, from sincerity, not show. Some people will still call you arrogant, not because your tone is wrong, not because your message is harmful, but because your confidence unsettles their insecurity. They've gotten so used to sugar-coated lies, to half-hearted truths, to polite silence, that when someone finally speaks with certainty, they feel personally attacked, even if the words weren't directed at them. You begin to notice it. You express a boundary, and they say you think you're better. You choose not to argue, and they call you proud. You walk away from sin, and they accuse you of being judgmental. But what they don't understand is this: you're not speaking from pride. You're speaking from pain, from healing, from lessons learned the hard way. You didn't wake up one day full of wisdom and strength. You were broken, humbled, shattered in secret, and rebuilt by Allah piece by piece. What they call arrogance is actually the calmness that comes from surviving what tried to destroy you. And yet, the insecure heart can't make sense of that. To them, your firmness looks like superiority. Your clarity feels like criticism. Your growth feels like a silent rebuke of their comfort. And instead of looking inward and asking themselves why your confidence stings, they point the finger at you. They create stories. They twist your intentions. They mock your strength, not because you've wronged them, but because your presence reminds them of what they could be if they chose growth too. But you must not let their misunderstanding silence your truth. You must not shrink your strength just to make them feel tall. You must not dull your wisdom so they can stay comfortable in ignorance. Allah gave you your voice for a reason. He didn't heal you just so you could hide. He didn't guide you just so you could blend in. He raised you so you could speak, so you could lead, so you could be an example, not of perfection, but of transformation. And yes, you'll have to walk that fine line between confidence and humility. You'll have to check your intentions again and again. You'll have to keep your ego in check, even when others accuse you of having one. That's the real test. Can you remain sincere even while being misunderstood? Can you stay kind even while being mocked? Can you keep speaking truth even when it costs you connection? Because the truth is this: real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to boast. Real wisdom doesn't need applause. It just needs to be lived. And real sincerity doesn't need to be explained to those who don't want to understand. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was accused of being a magician, a liar, a madman, not because he lacked sincerity, but because his truth was too heavy for some hearts to carry. You are not greater than him. If people misunderstood him, they will misunderstand you too. But remember this always: Allah knows the hearts. He sees beyond the accusations. He knows what you mean when you speak. He knows what you intend when you act. And as long as He is pleased with you, the opinions of people hold no weight. So keep speaking the truth. Speak it with softness. Speak it with love, but don't stop speaking it. Your words may sting the insecure, but to someone out there, your truth is the rope they've been praying for. Your voice may be the sign someone asked Allah to send, and that alone is reason enough to never let fear silence your light. 7. Wisdom is lonely, but it's not empty. There's a hidden cost to seeing the world clearly. The more wisdom Allah grants you, the more you begin to notice things that others don't. You see through fake smiles. You feel the tension in a room before anyone says a word. You sense when someone is lying, not because of what they say, but because of how it feels in your gut. You recognize the patterns people try to hide. You detect the darkness behind the laughter. And while this awareness makes you stronger, it also makes life lonelier. Because the more you understand people, the more you realize how much is hidden behind their words. You no longer enjoy shallow conversations. You find yourself drifting from meaningless interactions. You no longer have the energy to pretend. You crave depth, honesty, peace. But the world often offers noise, pretense, and distraction. And so, without even trying, you begin to detach. You speak less. You observe more. You retreat, not to escape others, but to protect your soul. And in that retreat, you find something you didn't expect. Silence that heals, solitude that soothes, distance that reveals. It's in this space of quiet that you begin to meet your true self. The version of you that doesn't perform for attention. The version that doesn't need applause. The version that sits quietly with Allah, even when the world feels far away. And that version, though it may walk alone, is not empty. It's full of clarity, full of insight, full of connection with the one who matters most. You begin to understand that loneliness isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a protection. Sometimes it's an invitation to disconnect from the world so you can reconnect with your Creator. Yes, wisdom isolates, but not because you're broken. It isolates because your soul is healing, because you're no longer dependent on the company of the crowd. You're learning to be content with your own company, and most importantly, you're learning to be content with the presence of Allah. That's why the solitude doesn't feel like emptiness anymore. It feels like sanctuary. It feels like a sacred space between you and your Lord, where no noise can reach, where no judgment exists, where peace flows freely. But here's the test. Can you embrace this season without bitterness? Can you sit in silence without rushing back to distraction? Can you let go of the people who left without chasing their shadows? Because the truth is, not everyone can walk with you where Allah is taking you. Not everyone can handle the weight of the wisdom you've been given. Some people were only meant to be part of your past, not your purpose. And the more you grow, the more you'll outgrow. But do not fear this shedding. Do not fear the narrowing of your circle. Do not confuse isolation with abandonment. Allah is never absent from the one who remembers Him. And if your journey has led you to a place where it's just you, your tears, your heart, and your dua, know that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, because it's in those moments that your connection with Allah deepens. It's in those moments that your heart becomes strong enough to carry the mission He has for you. Wisdom is not about knowing everything. It's about trusting the one who does. It's about seeing the world as it truly is, and still choosing to walk with kindness. It's about having the strength to be alone without feeling lonely, because your soul knows that in every quiet step, in every silent prayer, in every lonely night, Allah is near, closer than your breath, closer than your pain, closer than the ones who left you. So yes, wisdom may feel lonely, but it is never empty. It is full of meaning, full of purpose, full of Allah's quiet presence guiding you, shaping you, elevating you. Don't run from it. Embrace it, grow in it, and walk your path with grace, even if no one is walking beside you. The moment Allah places wisdom in your heart, your life will never be the same again. You begin to see with different eyes. You begin to hear what others miss. You begin to feel deeper, speak slower, and move with a purpose that confuses the crowd. But with that gift comes a responsibility and a loneliness that not everyone will understand. People will mislabel your silence as arrogance. They'll mistake your boundaries for rejection. They'll resent your clarity because it reminds them of everything they've avoided within themselves. And when your soul becomes too heavy for shallow company, the world will call you difficult, strange, or too intense. But you must remember, you were never created to live for their approval. You were created to live for Allah. You will outgrow circles that once felt like home. You will walk away from relationships that once defined your days. You will find your spirit no longer tolerating what it once accepted without question. And that's not pride, it's purification. That's not coldness, it's clarity. And while the world might not understand it, your Lord does. He sees the nights you spend in silence. He hears the prayers behind your stillness. He knows the strength it takes to hold your tongue when your heart wants to explode, and he rewards that kind of restraint in ways the world can never comprehend. So let them talk, let them whisper, let them turn away. Your job is not to make them comfortable. Your job is to stay obedient, sincere, and rooted. You were given this wisdom not to show off, but to show up, to be a light in dark places, to speak when silence would be betrayal, to stay quiet when anger would destroy you, to walk away when staying would compromise your soul. And yes, that will sometimes make you the villain in other people's stories. But so be it. You are not here to play a role in someone else's illusion. You are here to live your truth. And that truth is simple. When Allah opens your eyes, you can never go back to blindness. When He pulls you out of distraction, you can never find peace in noise again. When He places wisdom in your heart, it becomes your compass, even if the world tries to drag you in the opposite direction. So hold on to it, protect it, nourish it, and never apologize for it. Because your wisdom, though it may disturb others, is a sign that Allah is drawing you closer to Him. And that is a journey worth everything, even if it costs you everything else. In the end, the people who leave were never meant to carry your calling. The confusion around you is proof of the clarity within you, and the loneliness you feel, that's not emptiness. It's space Allah has cleared so He can fill it with Himself. Stay rooted, stay silent, stay sincere, because they may not handle the wisdom Allah gave you, but you were always meant to carry it.